All right, so in the previous video, you learned about the structure of how games are made from the standpoint of departments. In this video, we're going to talk about hierarchy. Now, you might want to think about departments as the horizontal structure for game development, and hierarchy is the vertical structure. So who starts when they first come onto the company in their very first year ever working in video games, and who are the people who have been there for a very long time and really know the ropes? So this structure is going to be different, again, just like with the departments. The hierarchy is going to work a little differently, and they're going to have different names for things as we go into the rest of this video. Just bear with me. I'm speaking from my experience as a game developer. This is especially going to be different in television and film, but in video games, they have a more specific way of working. I was at Riot Games for 6 years, so I'm going to speak mostly to that experience. But I also have worked with a lot of other studios, so I have some familiarity with what they do generally across the board. Anyway, enough of that. I'm super excited to dive into what it's like being at each of these tiers, what it's going to mean to you as you get your first job in the industry, and what you can expect in the day-to-day experience. Okay, so all of us have to start somewhere on the hierarchy of roles in the game development industry. Right at the very beginning, at the very bottom rungs of the ladder, there's two different ways for you to get in. Those two different ways are going to be either as an intern or a junior artist. Now, this doesn't matter whether you're a VFX artist or an environment artist, an animator, whatever. If it's a creative position, you're going to have to start either as an intern or a junior artist. I'm going to explain the difference between the two, but really those are the two major entry points for us. Okay, so first let's dive into interns. Now, interns are also sometimes called apprentices, depending on how a studio likes to run its programs. And the basic idea is that it's training on the job. Now, you're going to get paid, and it's going to be a temporary position. The idea is that by the end of that set amount of time, usually about 2 to 3 months, they're going to want to look at what you've done during that time, how you've performed, and consider if you're somebody that they may want to work with in the long run. So it's definitely a proving period, and it's definitely a time for you to grow and develop and ask all those questions and get familiar with what it's like being at a studio. Because the assumption is you're a student, you've never worked at a studio before, you don't really know what you're doing yet. Now, to get an internship, what you need is a really strong portfolio. You need to show them that you have potential, that you have core skills that are foundational to being a successful artist in the industry. Especially, you want to showcase that you have the skills that they use at their particular studio. That's how you get the internship. Once you're in, you've got your foot in the door. That's a huge, major first step, but the work is just beginning because you want to make sure that you're asking for lots of feedback, that you're able to listen closely to that feedback, and then, of course, apply it to your work to make it better. When you're at these very beginning level roles, that's the most critical thing that studios are always looking for. How well does this person learn and grow? Are they a self-starter? Are they able to ask the hard questions and look inside and see where they can get better? Because they know you're not a professional. They know that you're not operating at this incredibly high level of skill. So it's going to take some time for you to learn and grow. But that's the key. Are you able to learn and grow? That's the most important thing to keep in mind when you're an apprentice or an intern or a junior artist. So back to the day-to-day on what it's like being an intern. You can expect to work really hard on your assignments. Some of those assignments may or may not end up in the game itself. Sometimes they'll give you work that's just for practice and learning. Other times they may actually give you some work that ends up in the final product of the game. Because of that, they will be paying you for your time. Internships, in my experience, are typically paid when working in the games industry. If they're not going to pay you, there's some legal issues with that. Just make sure that you're careful about that. I would recommend going only for internships that are paid. Okay, so then you've got junior artists or junior VFX artist for specifics for the sake of what we like to talk about the most. A junior artist is somebody who is hired on permanently with a studio. So maybe they started as an intern, or maybe they've already graduated from school with a really strong portfolio. Maybe they've done some side projects with some friends or other students. That would be somebody who's ready for a junior level position. Now, there's one thing to note here. Sometimes you might have a slightly higher level position at another studio, But as you're moving over to a different studio that has a different style, a different approach, maybe they're much bigger and they have much higher standards for quality, they might still sort of demote your title back down to junior because that's where you need to be at in order to learn and grow there. That's pretty standard because they have certain needs and expectations. We call this starting over, right? But if it's the right move for you and it's a studio you're really excited to go ahead and take the title reduction. Who cares? Because the point is that junior artists are still in this great zone where they're learning and growing and getting taught and mentored by other artists around them. Of course, consider your own situation, if it makes sense for you to do that or not. It's totally going to be up to you, but this is how it works. You might climb up one ladder, but if it's not relevant skills to another studio, you may have to start that ladder over again at a slightly lower level until you're caught back up to the same title, pay, that kind of thing. All right, so junior artists, a lot like interns in some ways, although the expectation is a little bit higher because their work is always going to be a part of production. They're going to be making things that go into the game. Keep in mind, you're not going to be making things that are the big, show-stopping, most epic things ever in the game. That's usually not going to be entrusted to a junior VFX artist. However, if you're the only VFX artist on the game, that's a whole other story. We've known many people, because the VFX discipline is rather small oftentimes, that have had to go it alone. In that case, I wish you luck. Reach out to me. I'm here for your support. That's what VFX Apprentice is there for, is to support people, whatever kind of journey they're on. Anyway, back to the expectations. You're going to be sitting in on some meetings. Maybe in the morning time, you're going to round up and see what everyone's working on for the day. You get a chance to report on what you're working on. And then you're going to get to work. Probably going to have lunch with your team at some point and then work through the afternoon. Call it a day. Maybe you have one wrap-up meeting or something like that, depending on what you're working on, and you head home. So the day in the life is pretty straightforward as a junior artist. Minimal amount of meetings, most of your time spent working, really getting familiar with what's going on. Those meetings are also going to be very important for you because that's where you're going to get a lot of your feedback. It's where you're going to get a lot of your ideas, have opportunities to ask questions, and again, demonstrate that you are willing to learn and grow. That is absolutely key. All right, so next I want to talk about mid-level artists, also just sometimes called VFX artists or animator or environment artist. It's essentially the name of the department without any other attachments to it. So if you're a regular old-fashioned VFX artist, you're pretty much in the mid-level of things. Sometimes this is called a VFX artist 1 or a VFX artist 2, or maybe even a VFX artist 3, because they like to break it down even into more rungs of the ladder along that mid-level tier. So, point is, a VFX artist or a regular old mid-level artist is somebody who is a lot more autonomous than a junior artist. This basically means that they can be set on a project and the leadership can forget what they're doing until they deliver it later. This set and forget principle is important because it opens up a lot of flexibility to you as an artist. It means that you can do things without asking a ton of oh, where are those files located again? And oh, what's the style of the game again? And how do I do this? It really lets you cruise through your work at a much more comfortable pace. Now, you might expect to move from junior VFX artist to a mid-level artist within the course of about a couple of years on average. This doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need feedback at all anymore. Of course not. We all need feedback. And mid-level artists are going to be expected to respond and act on feedback in a very positive way as well. There's never any room on a team for egos and people assuming that they just have it all figured out. All of us need to be able to listen and learn and grow together, especially in the games industry where reputation really matters and people want to know that you're great to work with, that you're easy to talk to, that you take your feedback well, and you're always learning and growing. Okay, so this flexibility piece introduces a whole new component into the potential for the day-to-day of a mid-level artist. Now, of course, if you're an employee, it's going to be very similar to it was as a junior artist. You're going to have your meetings, usually in the morning. You're going to have time to work. You're going to have lunch with your coworkers. You're going to get a lot more work done in the afternoon and probably have other types of meetings that come here and there at random. The thing of it is, as a mid-level artist, now there's this potential to become a contractor. Now, a contractor is essentially someone who works on contract instead of working as an employee. And that means that you're going to be more likely able to do things like work remotely or from home. You're going to be able to set more of your own hours as long as you're hitting your deliverables. That contract is them requesting that you deliver the work that they asked when they asked for it. And of course, sit in on whatever necessary meetings you need to sit in on. But if you're in a different time zone, you just need to make sure that those meeting times line up, and the rest is up to you. You have a lot more flexibility as a contractor, which is great. Now, one of the big downsides of being a contractor is that you don't get the employee benefits that you would have from being considered a full-time employee. These include things in the United States like healthcare benefits, paid time off, other perks like merchandise that's sent out around the holiday season, which a lot of studios like to do, which is kind of cool. Team events and other kinds of perks that the studio might have for its employees. Contractors aren't going to get those things, but what they do get is that flexibility. And sometimes they get a little bit of a higher rate that they're paid because they're not getting those benefits. So that's something to talk with them about. If you're planning on being a contractor, there's lots of different setups that different studios do with their contractors, but that's the general idea. And that option opens up as you become a mid-level experienced artist and above. Okay, so on to senior level artists next. Okay, so next up comes the senior artists, also known as the subject matter experts, or SME for short, if you want to get into the jargon even more. Okay, so a senior artist is somebody that knows how to do the thing. Obviously, they're very good at the thing. They know a ton about it, and they've been doing it for a long time. A senior artist I've seen start to be a senior with as short as like 4 to 5 years of experience. But really, it could be anything above and beyond that. It really depends on how they've grown and progressed throughout their early career and which projects they've been on, whether those projects are relevant to the current project that they're on, where they're being considered to be promoted to a senior. These all play in a very different and unique kind of way. So it's hard to put an exact number of years that it takes to become a senior, but suffice it to say, they know their stuff and they're very good at it. Now, a senior artist is going to be expected to teach and train those junior artists and the interns, the ones that we were mentioning earlier. So they're going to be sitting next to, helping and assisting those artists that are newer and more green. So if you love to teach, if you love sharing knowledge, being a senior artist is going to be a lot of fun for you. Also, of course, they're expected to create work, and not only just create the work that they're asked to create, but also know a lot about the pipeline, how to work with other departments, how to foresee issues before those issues come up, and put things into place that are going to get them through those issues in a very smooth way, or maybe even avoid them altogether. Senior artists are not just expected to get the job done without being supervised, so to speak, but they're really expected to get it done and then tell the supervisor what else was missed so that they can kind of work as a leader in a way to help avoid major icebergs, roadblocks, hurdles, whatever you want to call them, and get the project done in a smooth and timely manner. That's why they get paid more. Their pay is considerably more than that of a junior artist. It's because they're able to deliver more value to the company by saving a ton of time, not only in their own work, but in other people's work as well, because they're involved at that level. Next up, we have principal VFX artists. Now, these are the individuals who make visual effects and are the highest paid people who do it. So if you have career aspirations to be the best there ever was at making visual effects, you're going to want to shoot for becoming a principal VFX artist. These individuals are rare. There's not very many of them. Just like having one principal at a school, there's usually only one principal VFX artist per game project. This individual is responsible for overseeing the style and the development of the thing that they are so good at. So a principal character animator, a principal environment artist, a principal VFX artist, etc., would each be in charge of the look and feel of what it is that they are so amazing at making. Now, not every team has a principal artist in each department. Sometimes a team doesn't have any principal artists at all. Like I said, they're pretty rare and hard to come by. The key thing you need to know is that they are not a manager. They're not somebody who oversees the careers and growth of other people. They're somebody who does some mentoring to coach people on the style and the look of the effects, but they really spend the bulk of their time making those effects and doing an amazing job at it. These individuals are truly talented, and if you ever get to work with one on your team, that's an exciting thing because they're going to teach you a ton just by observing what they do and how they do it. So next up, I want to talk about leads. Now, leads are different from principals in a key difference. And you probably guess what that is, and that is that they lead people, right? They're actually managers, oftentimes as they're called, or even supervisors, depending on the studio where they work. So a lead is somebody who helps individuals on their team with their career growth. This is going to be your manager, the person that you go to when you want to ask for a raise, the person you go to when you want to lodge a complaint about a fellow coworker, or you want to ask something about what's going on at the company at the higher levels. The lead is your go-to person. They're the person in charge of you. They are your boss. So if you're going to be a boss of other people, obviously you're going to need a lot of years of experience, and you're going to need good leadership qualities, also good management skills. Leadership and management are not necessarily the same thing, right? Leadership is your ability to go by example, show good character, kindness, empathy, all the support that you need to show your team. Management is handling budgets and schedules and planning and logistics and all of those left brain activities, let's say, of being in charge. Now, leads are awesome and they're critical. They need really good communication skills. They even need good politics skills. And I know politics is kind of a negative thing that we don't like to talk about a lot because so often it goes wrong. Well, we need good leaders at studios to prevent things from getting toxic. So actually a lead's job is to listen before talking and understand the needs of everyone and why we're disagreeing on something and how to find an answer that's going to serve everyone and bring everyone to the same table and move in the right direction that's best for the game and the overall productivity. Okay, so leads are great at communication, leadership, and politics skills. If those are things that you want to learn, getting into that track might be really interesting to you. It's definitely been a lot of fun for me running my own company. I get to be a leader and a manager and working with a ton of different people. That's something that I've really loved because it helps me build something that's much bigger than myself through the efforts of others, all coming together to work toward a common purpose. All right, so next up we have the art director, who essentially oversees all of the artistic departments on the entire game. This is a very critical leadership role, and it's one that definitely comes with a lot of experience before you're ever going to be ready to be an art director, but it's a lot of fun to think about and kind of plan for. Also, coming onto your first game, it'll help you have a little bit of background on who your art director is and what they do after listening to this section. Okay, so an art director is essentially someone who combines art and management into one beautiful fusion to make the game happen. They're responsible for the vision of the game, how it's going to play out visually and how it's going to look aesthetically and how we're going to achieve it technically. The art director is somebody who could have come from any of the artistic disciplines. They could have been an environment artist or a concept artist. In fact, some of the best art directors that I've met have been VFX artists. Because VFX is such a broad discipline that works with so many other departments, we can oftentimes be a very natural fit for art direction as we move up the ladder. Now, you may have come up to be an art director through being a lead or through being a principal artist. I've seen both. And both are viable career paths depending on how they've structured things, whether you have people reporting to you or not as an art director. It can all really vary based on the needs of the project. So that pretty much covers the entire hierarchy for the artistic disciplines. When I say disciplines, I mean differences between an environment artist, an effects artist, an animator. Those are different disciplines. Now, what's interesting is that there's a whole discipline that's built just to support this hierarchy, and this is the production discipline. Now, these individuals are broken up into different types, and they have lots of different titles. Oftentimes, they're called production coordinators at the very beginning, all the way up to producers and executive producers at the top. Other times, I've seen them referred to as development managers, product owners, delivery leads. There's many, many things that you can call them, and there's many specialties within production that you can focus on. Now, the key thing to remember is that they are there to support the artistic development and make sure that it happens. Without a producer, there's no way this product is going to go out the door. There's a lot of natural tension between the creative people and the production people. And that's healthy. That's important for the thing to get done, because without good constraints, timelines, and deadlines, an artist will just go on forever trying to make the dang thing perfect, right? All of us work a little bit better when we have some constraints put on us. And what's cool about this too is that I've seen many executive producers from big titles go on to start their own companies as CEOs. So essentially, they're like business managers, managing how the game is going to present to the player, how it's going to be experienced, all those kinds of things. Okay, so that's the hierarchy and how it's supported. I hope you learned a lot, and I'll catch you in the next video.